Hello everybody, welcome to a new episode of Ask the Pundit with me, WrestlingPundit.com editor Keelan Balderson. We come to you every fortnight on alternating weeks with the Supla, answering all of your wrestling related questions. If you have a question or comment for a future episode, let me know on the YouTube account, on Facebook, on WrestlingPundit.com, anywhere and everywhere you can contact us. I'll take your questions and make note of them for future episodes. So let's jump straight in. Antonio Crescito asks, I'm always going to butcher people's names, I'm sorry, but to me it says Crescito, and he asks, would it be better for WWE if Raw and SmackDown counted as separate brands again? Since they currently aren't, there seems to be no logic for a general manager for each show. I'm going to say no. I've never been a fan of the brand split. I think it dilutes the product. It takes away kind of from that episodic television in that there's sort of separate storylines on each show and they don't cross over. I don't even like the fact that there's two main event titles. How can you have two world championships? That's essentially what they are. I know one to the WWE and one to the World Heavyweight, but they're basically both treated like the main event title. How can you do that? There's only one best wrestler. You don't have two UFC heavyweight champions. There aren't two World Cups in soccer, football. I just don't understand the logic behind it. We all know WWE is one company. Treat it that way. What's the point in splitting things up and causing all these unneeded complications? It can't be easy for creative. It can't be easy for Vince McMahon and his vision to have to sort through two separate shows. I mean, you might want to feud this guy with that guy, or hey, these two guys would have a brilliant match, let's book it. Oh no, we can't, they're on separate brands. It just causes unneeded complications. The only way I think it would have made sense is if when Vince bought WCW and they portrayed Shane McMahon as the owner of WCW when he walked out there on the last Nitro and they did that little angle, they could have given WCW SmackDown's time slot and ran the WCW on air as separate entities. They did that for a little while where they had separate matches and they had Scott Hudson and I think Mark Madden or someone doing the commentary just for the WCW matches, and they had the WCW referees for those matches. A brand split back then would have made a hell of a lot more sense, and they could have had crossover feuds and which show's better and things like that. But in current WWE, as a fan, you can never really get behind the separate brands because they aren't really separate, and there's nothing for people on each brand to fight for. It's not like it's a different company. They're not warring. It's not like as fans we go, I'm going to choose Raw over SmackDown. We just watch both. There's no reason to pick a side like there would have been for WCW. So other than that possible scenario which sailed many years ago, I've never liked the brand splits, and I certainly wouldn't be for bringing it back now. Not at all. It just doesn't make sense to me. It's pointless. As for the second part to your question, because they're not separate now, there's no logic to have GMs. I don't necessarily agree. I think whether they're a different brand or not, they're still a different TV show. And I think there's a logical reason why two different people could be in charge of two different TV shows, in the same way that there's different writers for each show and different producers for each show in real life. I don't think having someone in charge of each show is necessarily illogical. They could probably do it better, but no, I don't see that as a reason to split the brands strictly again. I will say, actually, I'm not really a fan of the GM concept in general anymore. I think it's just overused. There doesn't always have to be this evil authority figure on camera. I wouldn't mind going back to the more silent off-camera authority figures, you know, WWF President Jack Tunney, who barely ever appears on camera. The rules are enforced because they're the rules, and there should be checks and balances in place. If you break them, you're fined, you're fired, you get stripped of the title. You don't need someone constantly there on camera, you know, gibbering about things. I just think that perhaps it's overused. You can bring them onto camera when there's a controversial finish, or there's a title belt contract signing to make it seem important and official and things like that. But you don't need a GM. You can build up heat in other ways, through managers or just through, you know, through promos traditionally. I just think it's a bit overused. And also, obviously, with Triple H on every show right now, there's not really anything for these GM characters to do. He's the one running the show. He's the next step up the chain of command if he's on television. And what do you need a GM for if he's in the building? And although the Triple H, Stephanie, they've now given them a name, the Authority, although that storyline really is the best WWE television we've had in years, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that John Cena isn't there, and the company actually have to break away from that generic John Cena formula that they've used for so many years. But yeah, let's give them credit where credit's due. A lot of things have come together to make some pretty good programming right now. I don't remember it being this fun in a long time. However, back to this incessant need for them to have authority figures. I don't see why that is. So much focus now is on Triple H and Stephanie that you could argue that the heat's in the wrong place. The heat should be on the heel wrestlers so that things can be solved in the ring and everyone comes across looking strong. Daniel Bryan has been screwed over time and time again by Triple H in the storyline. The Big Show is at breaking point and wants to knock Triple H out. All the undercard are victims of Triple H and Stephanie. Look at The Miz. You know, Triple H can't have the big payoff match with everybody on the roster, so how is this all going to play out? You had the face, the quote face of the WWE, Randy Orton. They built him up as a major player along with the Authority, Triple H and Stephanie. And then he didn't get the job done. They stripped him of the title and now he's just a victim of their mind games. Yeah, he's gone out there and destroyed people, but he's being puppeteered. The heat's not really on Orton, it's on Triple H and Stephanie. The Shield are just their hired guns. And they're so dispensable to them that within the mind games, they put them in a handicap match against 11 other superstars. They don't actually care about them, so if they don't care about them, why should we care about them? The ultimate heels are Triple H and Stephanie. And while Triple H can get in the ring, he can't get in the ring with everybody, and Stephanie McMahon certainly can't get in the ring. So where does that leave everybody on the roster? As viewers, most of our anger is directed at the aging superstar of the past, not the current top heels. As I said, Orton stepped it up a little bit at this last Raw before Battleground, putting Bryan through the table and whatnot, but it's clear to viewers that Triple H is the main player here. And I'm not sure it's, quote, best for business for the top heel to not be an in-ring performer or a future star that's going to carry the company. And it's a very weird storyline because part of its intrigue is that it's dealing with many real-life criticisms of Triple H. That's why it's working so well. That's why people are talking about it so much. It's because in real life, People think Triple H is the way he is on camera. I wrote in one of my recent TV reports on WrestlingPundit.com that a lot of the hardcore fans do think that Triple H is a dick that holds people down. If you play into that on camera, it may work for a while because it is kind of interesting that they would bring these things up. But at what point does Triple H just become a dick and hold people down? Holding people down on camera is the same, if not worse, than holding people down backstage, because the fans get to see it firsthand. They see it happening. If a storyline books somebody to be weak, writes somebody to be weak, then in the fans' eyes they're weak. And unfortunately, a lot of fans still don't have faith that Daniel Bryan is actually going to come out on top and as champion and turn the tide on Triple H and have him running away with his tail between his legs and giving the proverbial rub. You only have to look at the ratings. They're now, after peaking, they've now gone down to the year's lowest number after this week's Raw, because they're not giving the good guys, they're not giving Triple H and Stephanie their comeuppance. They're too overbearing, and people don't trust that the good guys are going to come out on top. People were asking for refunds because Daniel Bryan was stripped of the title. You can't keep doing that. There has to be a point where he is the legitimate face of the company. He's beaten all the heels and he's on top, and everybody can legitimately scream yes. But there doesn't seem to be a sign that that's going to happen. It's too drawn out. It's too much of the same every week, and people don't believe that Triple H is going to do the right thing. So I certainly see what Carmine, our regular contributor to the Supla, I can see what he was getting at when we had the big Daniel Bryan debate back when he first won the title and Triple H pedigreed him. Triple H is all over this storyline. He's all up in this shit. And fans are worried that he's not going to get that comeuppance. And on this topic of heel general managers and overbearing authority figures, this brings us to TNA and Dixie Carter and AJ Styles. This weak imitation of what's going on in WWE, with AJ cutting his quote pipe bomb and Dixie knowing what's best for business by burying the company. Again, why does there have to be this evil on-air authority figure? Why has it become such a central theme in wrestling? Wrestling is supposed to be, sort of a simulation of a sport. It's supposed to be about wrestlers wrestling and them having grudges with each other and going after titles and, being a recreation of what it would be if it was a shoot. It's MMA with storylines. Just because at one period in time during the Attitude Era, Vince McMahon became the on-air antagonist to Steve Austin as the evil billionaire, doesn't mean that all wrestling forever going forward has to use the same formula. That was just one angle. That was just one storyline at one point in time. That's not what wrestling is. It's just something they did. It'd be like if every single TV drama for the next 20 years was about science teachers with cancer cooking meth. No, that's not what a TV drama is. That's what one TV drama did once. You see, the heel overbearing owner, that's not what wrestling is. That was a storyline that happened once. You don't have to do it over and over and over and over again. And for TNA to do it in such a cheap rip-off way, forcing fans to compare TNA to WWE, with AJ Styles saying, "Oh, I'm better than the best in the world." No, you're not. I'm sorry, you're good. You were a fundamental element in making TNA different, when you were different, when you weren't trying to be CM Punk. You know, when there was an X division and it meant something. You're not CM Punk. Go be AJ Styles, because that's what you're good at. Not these awkward, copycat in-ring microphone segments. Go be the amazing flyer that everybody wants you to be, that set you apart, that created that buzz in the early days. And for Dixie Carter to then call him, he's not the phenomenal one, he's the marginal one. She's right. And then she starts acknowledging, all the bad things she's done, and they talk about how the company now sucks. All while the fans are saying the company sucks. Why don't you just fix why it sucks? Don't turn the fact that it sucks into a storyline. You're supposed to hide the bad and accentuate the good. Don't make the fact that it's bad part of the angle. Triple H and Stephanie are part of a multi-million-dollar publicly traded corporation. You're firing wrestlers left, right and centre because you're going through financial issues. Something tells me something you've been doing isn't best for business. And to make this real life weakness of Dixie Carter's, this all this bad business that's been happening in that company, to make that part of the storyline is a bad idea. So I don't want to make this the TNA rant. We do that every time on the Supla. Even if I try and be positive, it always turns into a TNA rant. So I don't want to make this the TNA rant. We're going to move on to our second and final question of today. We don't like to do these too long because it is just me ranting and that can get boring. But we'll go to Glenn Fielding, and he asks, how closely related is Edge's career-ending neck injury compared to Stone Cold's? Okay, I'll do my best to get down to the detail. I've done a bit of Googling. Edge originally broke his neck. Well, that's the point. He didn't actually break his neck per se. He had surgery in 2003. So if we're comparing the two, he didn't exactly break his neck. It wasn't like Steve Austin when it happened right there in the ring and there was a botched move and there was that snapping point. The problem with Edge is he built up wear and tear and pressure in his discs and vertebrae for years. There was so much wear and tear that, he felt numbness. You could tell that he could tell that his neck wasn't, up to scratch. And he'd probably be paralysed for life if he did have that snapping point like Steve Austin. So he had to have fusion surgery. Now, as the years went on, he developed quite a common condition with all sorts of athletes called stenosis, where pressure once again builds up on the fused vertebrae, again causing weakness and numbness, in your arms, your back, just not very encouraging symptoms. And he basically decided to walk away rather than risk paralysis in the ring. If he was dropped on his head wrong and he's got this weak neck and it's already had fusion surgery and that whole thing just goes, then things aren't looking good for Edge. So quitting while he's ahead might just keep him relatively pain-free and able to function normally as he goes into old age. Now, as I say, Steve Austin, on the other hand, had that definitive snapping point when he took that botched tombstone from Owen Hart. And he was actually paralysed briefly in the ring. He did kind of get back up and make a weak pin. But yeah, to compare them, they both suffered from stenosis symptoms, numbness, weakness, and all that. And I believe Austin also had a back injury from his younger days playing football at high school, maybe college football as well, I'm not sure. which made his neck injury at the time worse. That probably played into how much damage was done, because there was already wear and tear there. And Austin as well had neck fusion surgery. He obviously did come back after that, like Edge, but again, as you keep wrestling and the years of wear and tear begins to build up, the symptoms return and you risk getting badly injured. Theoretically, both of them could come back for one-off appearances. Austin has said in the past that it's a possibility if WWE make him an offer and he's allowed so many months to get in shape and stuff, that he could get in the ring. And Edge theoretically could keep wrestling. He's not paralysed now, but the safest thing to do is just to get out of there. The risk will always be there. You look at Misawa in Japan, he died in the ring. You know, in Japan they like that strong style, all the suplexes on the neck, and that style is revered over there. And Misawa is somebody that battled through similar neck issues, the wear and tear, the symptoms, but he refused to get it properly looked at. He didn't have the fusion surgery, he just powered on through, and one day he got dropped on his head and he died. So are they willing to take that risk? Is it worth taking that risk? I mean, the risk is there for anybody if you land badly on your neck, but when you've got diagnosed issues there and you've had bits removed and bits fused together and you're not in optimum shape, it's not a good idea to be jumping around on your neck. Kurt Angle had similar issues, but his is slightly different. People aren't quite sure whether he's actually okay or not. I mean, obviously he was addicted to pain pills. He's just been in rehab for alcohol. You never know whether this is part of managing the pain and the damage that he's just not being honest about. But he never had the fusion surgery. He had a broken neck, damaged discs and whatnot when he won an Olympic gold medal. Then he went into professional wrestling with these pre-existing problems, but he never had that fusion surgery. And by all accounts, the fact that you have the fusion surgery, it reinforces the neck and it fixes the issues then and there, but in the long run it does put you at more of a risk, and in the long run you can end up with the whole neck being weaker. Because what they do with fusion surgery is they take out the damaged discs, take bits of bone from elsewhere and kind of fuse it all together, so you lose mobility, you lose sort of motion and flexibility. So if you are dropped on your head, it snaps even worse. Angle had a different kind of surgery where the discs weren't removed. They kind of removed bits of, because often you get bone spurs that jam into the discs and things. He had it cleaned out a bit, but he never had the actual fusion surgery. He says he's better for it. Other people are skeptical that he's just managing the pain himself or whatever, but that's that. I hope that answers your question, Glenn. But that wraps it up for this week's Ask the Pundit. Be sure to keep it locked on WrestlingPundit.com. Daily updates to the newswire, regular blogs and in-depth analysis of various news headlines and what's going on in WWE and TNA, and reviews of the TV shows and everything. So be sure to be a regular visitor to WrestlingPundit.com, and I'll catch you in 2 weeks for another episode of Ask the Pundit.